The judgment of the apple. They built the courtroom on the stairs of Times Square and called it justice. The lights of Broadway became our stained glass, the taxis our choirs. The city hummed with caffeine and curiosity. For one afternoon, the Big Apple turned into the garden again, and humanity gathered to see if it had learned anything since the first bite. People came in waves, lawyers, prophets, journalists, sinners, and tourists who thought this was a matinee. On the giant screens, the headline flashed, "The Vatican of Misbehavior Present." Popcorn vendors set up beside rosary sellers. Reporters whispered like evangelists of Wi-Fi. Even the pigeons perched in reverence. I watched from above the steps, amused. They believe it's theater, I murmured to Lilia. She adjusted her black jacket, eyes bright with irony. Isn't everything? She was radiant, exhausted, magnificent, our lawyer of souls, about to defend the misunderstood ghosts of time. Behind her, the women of eternity waited in silence. Mary Magdalene, serene and dangerous. Joan of Arc, armor polished to arrogance. Cleopatra, radiant and armed with eyeliner. Anne Boleyn, queen of unfinished sentences. Frida Kahlo, her hands still stained with color. Eva Peron, already rehearsing her balcony speech. And Maria Callas, who breathed as if every breath carried an area. The crowd roared when the cardinal, our accuser, arrived, a scarlet streak of indignation. He bowed stiffly and spoke into the microphones. Today, he said, we revisit the sins of pride, seduction, and defiance. Lilia smiled with dangerous calm. Today, she replied, we revisit your definitions of sin. I leaned toward her and whispered, lovely opening ad, a little thunder next time. The proceedings began. The city fell strangely quiet, even the naked cowboy wore a tie. The cardinal spoke first, quoting centuries of doctrine. His words fell heavy as coins. These women challenged divine order. He proclaimed they led men to ruin. The screens repeated his words in 20 languages, each translation duller than the last. When he finished, Lilia rose. She did not need a gavel. Her voice was enough. Your Honor, she began, ladies, gentlemen, saints, and spectators, we are not here to unmake history. We are here to ask it to tell the truth. Applause cracked through the crowd like lightning. History, she said, judged Anne Boleyn not for crimes of passion, but for the crime of thinking. Her intellect was rebranded as heresy, her clarity rewritten as guilt. They called her sinful when all she did was think too beautifully out loud. They burned her mind and called it virtue. They silenced her truth and called it sin. I felt the city hold its breath. Even neon seemed to dim in respect. The witnesses. First, a man in a coat stitched from newspapers, a philosopher of sidewalks. The guards tried to stop him, but Lilia insisted. Let him speak, she said. He knows what it means to be invisible. He climbed the steps, bowing awkwardly. I am homeless, he began, but not hopeless. Every night I talk to the stars. They tell me your saints never had rent either. If thinking too much is a sin, then I am holy. The crowd laughed, then cried, then clapped him off the stage. Next came a woman with a shopping cart full of poetry. I read about Joan of Arc. She said they called her mad, but madness is just courage without permission. Even the cardinal lowered his gaze. A third witness, a busker with a broken guitar, played a single note and said, if Cleopatra ruled today, Wall Street would be hers. The rest of us would still be poor, but at least the banks would wear eyeliner. The city exploded in laughter. Justice, it seemed, had a sense of humor. Then a hush rippled through the crowd. A single figure stepped forward from the shadows, barefoot, luminous, carrying an apple polished by eternity. Eve, no surname, no title, just origin itself. The cameras gasped, the cardinal dropped his notes. I was the first to be accused, she said softly, and you've been citing my case ever since. Her voice carried like a verdict through the skyscrapers. I ate, she continued, turning the apple in her palm, not because I was wicked, but because I was curious. Knowledge was never poison until someone wanted to keep it. Lilia approached her gently. And what do you plead, Mrs. Humanity? Eve smiled, small, tired, triumphant. Guilty, guilty of wanting to understand what love was made of. Guilty of giving the world questions. Guilty of the first why. The homeless philosopher shouted from the back, then you're our mother's sister. The crowd laughed and cheered. Eve raised the apple high. I gave you choice. What you did with it is not my sin. It's your story. I wrote the words in my invisible notebook of souls. Case reopened, I whispered. The apple glittered under the Broadway lights like a small defiant planet as the applause swelled. Maria Callas stood